Hello, welcome to Blue Rose Podcast. Our guest today is Veronica Santarelli. She is the CEO of Grassp Health, a medical cannabis education and delivery system in Arizona, launching soon in Massachusetts. She's a founding member of her company, has had to overcome immense challenges throughout her journey. She also recently started her own podcast, the Diet Obsessed Podcast. Check it out. I've listened to it. It's excellent, women. A podcast for those who are interested in diet culture, fitness, weight loss, and body positivity. She's extremely passionate about natural approaches to improve health and prevent disease as we age, hence her over 20 years of experience in health and wellness. Like many women, Veronica has had to push past self-doubt, insecurities, financial challenges, and discrimination to strive towards her goal, and she's just getting started. Welcome to the show, Veronica. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Karen.
I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. I mean, when you read, because you're a CEO of a large company.
Well, not huge, but yes, I am a CEO.
And you getting involved in medical cannabis when it was just kind of coming into the mainstream.
Yeah, we got back in 2014, and we could just see that there were a lot of industry problems that we were hoping to help solve.
So as a CEO, people often, when people meet CEOs, they never think of self-doubt, insecurities, any of that. They think, if you're the CEO, you've got it 100% together. And, so to come out and admit that you have those challenges, what made you able to become more of a voice for women to look and say, okay, this is how I've done it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have really strong female role models in my life. My mom, when her and my dad divorced, she put herself through school. She became the president of the largest mental health agency in Maine. My grandmother. So I have really strong female role models. But with that said, I've had to push past impostor syndrome and all kinds of other really moments of self-doubt to get to this position. I didn't start as the CEO. I did get promoted just really through hard work. And really that's kind of why I'm in this position, because I'm willing to do a lot more than what other people would do in a position like this. I think some people are workers and some people will just dig in there and do it. And I'm that type of person. So but when I took over as CEO, I had to raise money from VCs and do all these other things that I've never done before. And, it's been very uncomfortable. Some of these meetings, I constantly am second guessing myself, like, what did I do wrong? And you just have to just keep moving forward and know that you can learn from your failures and get even stronger. And that's exactly what I've done.
And how were you able to do that? Because I see so many women, they'll get to that wall and they hit one too many failures or one too many rejections, and they just can't pick themselves back up. But the women that have achieved the heights that you have to be able to keep picking yourself up. What do you attribute that to?
I had a psychologist tell me one time that women are very different from men in that, men are these, they try to be these strong oaks. And when the wind blows them down, they can't really get back up. But women, we're like a blade of grass. We'll bend way over and we might be sideways, but we'll spring back up eventually. So that's kind of how I would describe the challenges and how I've worked through them. I mean, I cry a lot. Tears cleanse the soul. And, for a long time, I was the only woman in my company for many years. And I was told that my emotions were bad and I shouldn't cry and I shouldn't be so emotional. And I felt so bad about myself for years and second guessed myself. But I read this great book that my stepfather gave me. I'm sorry, I'll send it to you after. I can't remember the name of it, but it's from a female CEO. And that quote is from her. That was like the first page. And I'm like, oh my God, I started crying when I read it. Cause I'm like, this is speaking to me, and to have another CEO female say, it's okay to cry. Like, cause I know that sometimes I'll just cry and then I'll get back up and I'll just keep moving forward, because that makes me feel better, is continuing to move forward, continuing to push. That's honestly sometimes the only way I get out of my own anxiety in my head, is achieving another small little win. And that gets me back, in the right headspace.
And it's interesting. I mean, for me, because I'm older, I'm 64. So to watch women in the CEO seat now, because when I started out, there were no women CEOs, and I would go to meetings where I was the only woman. But back then, the women's restroom would be 2 or 3 floors down. And I would make a comment to the guy saying, why don't you have a woman's restroom up here? And he'd be like, why would I?
Yeah.
So I mean, things have changed immensely, but you know, when you watch these battles.
No, and your story is very inspiring to me. Like I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and here's some of the challenges that you've overcome is very inspiring, Karen.
Well, thank you. I think when you get to medical cannabis, we actually talked off before we start talking here. I found myself at a medical cannabis conference, long story. And we went through the exhibit hall, which, this kid loves free gifts. And, most of the free gifts are still sitting in a bag because I didn't understand most of what they handed to me. But I was surprised that when you looked at the top level folk, not the salespeople on the floor, but the top level, they were all men. Mm-hmm. I still can't believe how many men were in that room. And I kept looking around saying, besides the women holding the little trays, where's everybody at? Yeah. So it's admirable that you're a CEO in that industry.
Thank you. And yeah, I started in my company being the only female. And since then I end up hiring a lot of females, and I don't discriminate against men. I just, I obviously choose the best candidate for the position, but I also know that women are very powerful creatures, and we hold ourselves accountable a lot of times to a much higher standard than, and we're held to that by society. And so I've had a lot of success hiring women, and the company that I was in when I was in the weight loss industry, it was like 99% women. And so that was another place that I had a lot of inspirational female leadership in front of me, were these powerhouse saleswomen that were leading this company. The vice president, the COO, they were all women. Now the 2 owners were men, but I worked with really successful women that were very inspirational and pushed through a lot of boundaries to get to where they were. But yeah, the cannabis industry is notoriously men driven, and we're trying to change that. The plant itself, the cannabis plant, the ones that it's a female plant. Those are the ones that produce the medicine that we need.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So we throw out the male seeds because they contaminate the pasture, and we only plant female seeds. So that's why I think the industry, it's always been a compassionate industry. It has been very, very female driven until this insurgence of regulation, and, then the white men that are, powerful and have all the money come in. But, women like me are trying to change that. So.
Yeah, and it's much needed. But I did not ever know that you worked in weight loss, which kind of explains your Diet Obsessed podcast. Because body positivity, I mean, probably every woman listening to this right now is shaking their head, saying, what a big thing.
Well, and so I spent, before I started Grassp, my cannabis company, I spent 6 years in the weight loss industry, and then another 6 years in the fitness industry. It's a science-based fitness industry. And I've lost 30 to 40 pounds a couple times in my life. And my dad died way too early. He died at 68. He's somebody that if he had had a little bit more balance, if he had eaten a little bit more nutritionally, if he had moved his body at all, he would not have died so early. And so to see how his eating habits, how his lack of activity, was detrimental to his health, it made me very passionate about health and wellness and fitness and nutrition. And so I thrived in the weight loss industry and the fitness industry. I loved it. And I wouldn't have left it unless, I started my own company. I'm also, very passionate about cannabis, but I'm very restricted in cannabis because it's so heavily regulated, and I can only sell in the state that I'm in. And so I was feeling very confined, and, and I've been hearing your podcast with encouraging women to do their side hustles and all. And I'm like, I need a side hustle. I want to do something where I'm not restricted. And, I don't have a lot of financial resources right now, but, a lot of stories of success come from people just doing what they love as a hobby, and so I was like, and I never had broadcasting around me. I never thought radio or broadcasting could be in my future, but then podcasting became a thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I could start my own podcast. And I didn't know how to do it. But I figured it out in a month. I figured out how to edit, how to tape, how to upload, and all of that. And I just said, let me just start. And I just did. And I've done it every week. and I just talk about what I love. I talk about fitness and nutrition and all this stuff. And because there was this backlash recently, like there is a backlash on diet culture. And I get that because not everybody, like the patriarchy and, men who've owned these diet companies have created this image that we have to look like a Victoria's Secret model, which is ridiculous, right? So I understand that backlash to diet culture, but I also understand there is a need and a place for people that want to lose weight for their health. So this podcast is trying to kind of balance those two ideas. And there is a place for people that want to lose weight and eat nutritionally and be focused on their health and weight loss. But then everybody doesn't have to fit into this mold of what society is saying, this is what you should look like.
And I think it's becoming much more mainstream, I think, than most realize. I'm a big Hallmark Christmas person. I'm not going to lie. I love Hallmark at Christmas. And I taped a bunch in July, and I just watched an episode where it was about this guy who owns a magazine, and it's like Vogue magazine. And one of the seamstress is a size 16, and they end up switching over, for the full figured woman. And I thought, this is such a great hallmark, because all the women that are sitting out there, and I guess they said the average woman in America is a size 16.
Right.
Which I was fascinated by that. And I thought, look at this. Hallmark is using their platform, their holiday shows, when everybody watches their Christmas shows, to start getting into that. So it's something that's so needed for women out there, because they've spent their lives trying to become these size 2 models. And
exactly. And one of the things I do on my podcast is I review other podcasts that talk about this. So there's this podcast, Diet Starts Tomorrow, and it's these younger girls. They're probably a decade younger than I am. They're like in their 30s, and they're the anti-diet culture movement, their body positivity, their intuitive eating. And so I review some of their podcasts and some of the topics they have. And I 100% agree with you. The average woman is in a larger size body, but that's not held up, but it is happening today, which is a wonderful thing.
It is a great thing. And I always, when I talk about weight, I truly believe that weight is a result of something. There's something burning and churning within.
Yep.
That weight serves as a spiritual protection. Yep. And if, women would understand that, if they would just start looking within, and thankfully people like you are out there talking more about this to understand it's okay to have issues running.
Yeah.
We all got our stuff.
100%. And you talk about, because didn't you talk about your like how your mom would make comments to you? And
yeah, I have the fat gene. I believed it for years. I believed it up until like 15 years ago. I really, truly, and I'm a medic. I was a medic in the military. So I should know no such thing as a fat gene, but I believe.
Well, and so many of our parents, grandparents, they put these little seeds in us, right? They say these things to us that make us think, oh, am I not good enough? Am I, how am I supposed to look? What's acceptable? And it can go both ways. I mean, my family really encouraged eating, and it was all about food and love, and other families are trying to take food away from their kids and creating other issues because of that. So we're all a little messed up in the heads. And, I think what you're trying to do on your podcast is get people to look inward and work on themselves. And I think that's really important, that we all look inward and work to improve our happiness and our mental health, and strive for our dreams and what will actually make us happy.
Yeah. And when I listen to you and look over your career, because I always look for patterns, and it's interesting because you've done fitness, weight loss, medical cannabis, and I'll be interested to see I always call it the what's next.
Yeah.
Your legacy move. And I know you're too young to be thinking of legacy move, but I see women moving younger and younger, starting to be like, okay, I've made my money, how am I going to leave an impact? And I'm fascinated because you have these 3 key elements right at an intersection at possibly one of the most perfect times in society, because women are finally looking and saying, hey, I'm okay the way I am.
100%. Well, and I do see somewhere in the continuum in the future, these worlds converging, because there is like a lot of athletes use cannabis as an anti-inflammatory agent and for recovery. And there absolutely is a correlation with and the endocannabinoid system that is our receptor system for cannabis. It's tied to our metabolism. I mean, I've had patients that have lost over 100 pounds once they started a cannabis regimen. So, and the science definitely is not there yet. They're researching it right now, but there are certain chemical makeups that can affect metabolism with cannabis. And I'm like, I want to do something in that world, you know, and I don't know, again, what that will look like. But there's even certain foods that interact with our cannabinoid receptors. So I'm really fascinated in that vein of science and where it could lead in my future.
We should have opened with this, because I was saying that, I'm like, I want cannabis if it'll help me lose weight. I got a whole bag filled with stuff. I don't know what it is.
Let's have a call after this, Karen.
You know, but it's interesting because when people think of cannabis, especially at my age, you know, they go back to the, you know, the 60s, although I'm not old enough to have gone to the 60s, and they don't realize how amazing cannabis is. And I just read yesterday in a Sunday paper that they're talking that everything's mainstream now. And, you know, they're going to start getting away from the medical cannabis and just start calling it what it is. And it's cannabis. I mean, it's medical, but you know what I'm saying? That people are just like, you know, okay, well, let's just open it all up.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the big debate, right? What's the difference between medical and recreational? Because people are walking into recreational dispensaries and purchasing cannabis for health-related reasons. I think in the medical world, where we really want to be taken seriously is like your world, Karen, like assisted living and skilled nursing and hospital systems where cannabis patients are still discriminated against often. You know, I just had the other day a resident with dementia. Her doctor's on board, her neurologist on board. She got a medical card. She has the prescription for it, but the assisted living community, the CEO is like, nope, we're not going to allow sensible administration and storage on our property. And I'm like, you're creating a hardship here. This is a legal medicine that's approved by the health department in Arizona. And again, sometimes you just can't break through that stigma, but absolutely things need to evolve and change. And I don't know, you know, we don't know what the future holds for that, because there's also pharmaceutical grade where the pharmaceutical companies are trying to control medical cannabis. And it's a crazy world, Karen.
You worded it better. I couldn't think of the word recreational. I was like trying to get to the word recreational because they are totally different things. And it's sad if somebody, you know, because when you hear medical cannabis, a lot of people are like, well, they're just sitting around getting high. And it couldn't be further from the truth of what's actually taking place. And you know, it's knocking down those walls.
Yeah.
You know, and you would have thought that'd be done by now, but that's why we have warriors like you.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it can be life-saving, you know, seizure disorders, you know, some of the dementia patients would spend the rest of their lives in a geriatric psychiatric hospital because the behavioral drugs that are just being plied into their, you know, care plan are just detrimental to their overall health. And when cannabis can manage like 5 of those symptoms. And anyway, it's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being on the show. I mean, the 20 minutes flew by. I could sit here for another hour and talk to you. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much information that I think needs to be out to the public. I know. Especially women. I mean, we need to accept ourselves more. So before I let you go, please let people know how they can talk to you, reach out to you. How do they talk to you?
Yeah, thank you. So if you're interested in diet culture, weight loss, fitness, you can follow my podcast. If you go to anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can search for the Diet Obsessed podcast and subscribe, leave a review. We love reviews. You can follow me on Instagram at the Diet Obsessed podcast. That's specific to fitness and weight loss. It's not my personal, but I share a lot of my personal. And then for anybody interested in cannabis as a medicine, you can go on our website, grassp.com. That's GRASSP health.com. And you can book a consultation right on the website and you'll get on my calendar. And we're happy to help you.
What a great name, Grassp. What a great name. You just couldn't have picked a better one. Okay, well, I thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions, reach out to her. This is a fascinating topic. That's all I got, you guys. Thanks a lot for joining us. Ladies, step into yourself. Just be the best you can be, and that's a perfect you. Have a great day, y'all. Talk to you soon.